Hello, audience, and welcome to Living Well with Dr. Sheila. This is the show that talks to you and informs you about everything that you need to live your best life. We talk about physical, spiritual, mental, and even financial information to help you to be able to do what you want to do in your life freely, safely, etc. Today I have, I preface this all the time because I love all of my guests. I love all of my guests. But I have someone here who is a friend, and I'm going to bring her on in a minute. She's going to give us some excellent information on um, working with teens and sexual health awareness, etc. So we're going to talk to her in just a minute. But just in case you are new to the show, I'll introduce myself. I am Dr. Sheila Craig Whiteman, the pelvic coach, as you can see. And what I do is I help women reduce and eliminate, of course, my voice will go right now, right? Reduce and eliminate bladder leaks. So that is my mission. I am a health coach. I also do health coaching for chronic illness, but I love helping women reduce and eliminate their bladder leaks. So I will have some information about that somewhere in the show, in the flow of things. But right now, I am excited to bring Amy Carpenter, who is the guest today, into the studio. But before I bring her, I'm going to go ahead and read her bio, and then we'll bring her on. So Amy has worked for 25 years as a psychotherapist and relationship coach. Her book, Be Strong, Be Wise, The Young Adult's Guide to Sexual Assault Awareness and Personal Safety, teaches risk reduction to boys, girls, and gender other youth in a way that empowers students to feel informed and not afraid. The curriculum is based on her work in high schools and colleges. It incorporates the safety tools that enhance personal and group awareness, support healthy relationships for young people from all walks of life. A longtime youth advocate, Amy believes every young person deserves to learn how to create healthy relationships and avoid toxic ones. She has two books in the Be Strong, Be Wise series, and she'll talk a little bit about them. I'm going to go ahead and bring Amy on. Let's bring her in here. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Dr. Sheila. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing really well. I've been looking forward to having a chat with you. I always love talking to you.
I've been looking forward to this too. You just don't know. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question that I ask everyone. I love for our audience to get a little bit of a background and get a feel for the guest and how they came about doing what they do. Usually it is a journey. If you started doing this from the beginning, great, you can tell us about that. But many people have started doing this as a springboard from something different. So go ahead and give us your story, and yeah, and we'll get to know you a little bit better from that.
Okay, I'm happy to. So as you said in your intro, I'm a psychotherapist and I've been in practice for many, many years. And I have worked over the course of my career primarily with women, which means that I've worked with a lot of assault survivors, since, of course, women are more likely to experience assault than men. And so over the course of my career, it became more and more concerning to me that, working with trauma recovery and the effects of that and PTSD and so forth, I wanted to write about it. So I've been a writer for many years. And so I started working on an article addressing the effects of trauma on the developing brain. And it's very interesting, and I won't get into the science too much, but most assaults happen in young adulthood. The demographic is 50% of assaults take place between the ages of 18 and 34. And so if you're on the younger end of that spectrum, there's going to be variables you have to manage, like your brain's not fully developed yet. There are things that are even more troubling and more traumatic for that younger age bracket, obviously because they are still forming, they're still growing. So I wanted to write about this, and I started to work on an article of the effects of trauma on the developing brain. And in the midst of writing this article, somebody very close to me was assaulted. And now I'm a survivor myself. And I realized, because it was hugely emotionally impactful for me when this person was assaulted, and it kind of upended my world, and there was a lot of grief and emotional upset. And I realized, trauma and working with sexual trauma specifically has been a part of my life since I was a small child, which is when I was assaulted myself. So without really consciously planning my life that way, as you pointed out, it was like this springboard that I wasn't even aware of. I had taken this leap that I wasn't even aware of. And when I became aware of it on the heels of that particular trauma, I realized I had been focusing throughout my career on responding to assault. And perhaps it was time to do something about prevention. So I was preparing to send my daughter off to college. She was then 17. And so I began to research, tried to find anything I could on how to equip young people, especially women who are preparing to launch, preparing to go into the world, how to equip them with resources that help them stay safe, that help them recognize risk, know what to do, know how to communicate their boundaries, know how to listen to their intuition. And when I did my research, I found very little, in the book world, I found very little that I could offer her around sexual assault prevention. There was lots of data points. There's lots of, articles, lots of information around the date rape drug, like very specific pieces, but I wasn't able to find anything comprehensive. And so that's when I started to kind of think and research and think some more, and began to write. And it became this obsession, if you will, where I just, went all in and ended up pulling from any resource I could, and did some researching and did some interviewing and did more research, and ended up coming up with this curriculum, which is tracked in my book. So there's 5 classes in the curriculum, and they're talked about in the 5 classes in the book. So that's kind of a long-winded way of answering your question, but that's how I got here.
Yeah, and it wasn't quite, it wasn't that long-winded. I just, it really, it was not. I just, and that was a good, yeah, that was a good steps, told us exactly what, what happened and the whys.
Yeah.
And even when you started doing psychotherapy, was this your focus? Or you did?
It wasn't intentionally my focus. When I started my career, way back when, 25 years ago, I worked with individuals and families, and again, because it was naturally my client load, if you will, the people that ended up coming to me were primarily women. And over time, I realized that working with women in transition specifically, which, many women are in transition all the time, but that was kind of my wheelhouse. That was where I really loved working with women who were going through, new motherhood, divorce or separation. And so in the course of that, I inevitably was working with trauma. Because as you can imagine, we have 1 out of 4 women have experienced sexual assault. You can't have a career as a psychotherapist and not experience PTSD with your clients. So I was working with a lot of women who were struggling with the effects of sexual trauma. And it wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened. Yeah.
Do you only work with women?
No.
Okay.
No.
And do you have statistics, if you don't, whatever, but do you have statistics on the number of men or young men, boys?
The most recent one I saw, and this is for young men, was one, I believe it's 1 in 10. It might be 1 in 11.
Okay. Well, that's a big difference then between that and women. You said 1 in 4.
1 in 4. Now, it's interesting. Research is funny.
Yes, it is.
As you know, you can use
Mm-hmm.
different types of research. I have also read that at the middle school level,
Mm-hmm.
boys are almost as likely to experience assault as girls are.
Mm-hmm.
So at the middle school level, and I would say the numbers are growing all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so I don't see any, they're certainly not equal, but it is becoming an increasing problem for boys,
Mm-hmm.
especially then at that younger age. We're seeing a lot of cyber harassment and cyber stalking with these younger ages. And as we know, sexual assault occurs in middle school too.
Yes.
So it is a little bit more equal at that age level, but it's still far more impactful for girls.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. I know the stats for boys is different, but from what I understood it, well, any number is significant. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I knew that it wasn't that this hardly ever happens because it does, to boys also.
Right. And
Um,
we know that there's an issue with reporting and that a lot of this goes under the radar.
yes.
And
Yes.
the ACLU has estimated that 95% of rapes on college campuses go unreported. So
Oh,
there's a huge, huge, huge number of assaults that no one ever hears about. And
wow.
I'm on a mission to change that. So we're really trying to empower youth to speak up. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
slow process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's a big mission. And that's a great mission to have because 95% unreported, that's a terrible stat.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But so why is it important now? We're kind of segueing into this from this conversation. Why is it important now for teens to have a pathway to talk about sexual ethics and sexual practices and what is okay to experience and what is not?
Right. Well, I think it's always been important, but we're seeing certain behaviors and certain realities that teens are living with that were different. For example, when you and I were young, and we
Mhm.
know this as adults.
Yeah.
Anybody who's parented a teenager knows the world's very different now. But I call it the digital divide. This is one example of how things are different now, where you have a generation of parents who are raising teenagers who that they themselves did not grow up in the digital age. And so they're raising teenagers who are likely to be more savvy than they are with their devices. And so there's a huge disconnect between what teens are navigating on their phones and what adults know about as far as what they're navigating on their phones. And of course, teens don't really want to share this with their parents. Parents don't know how to talk about it with their teenager. And so it's creating this divide where it doesn't help keep young people safe. So when I talk to school assemblies and I meet with high schoolers, I kind of put this on the table for them to think about. It's not their fault. There's nothing that they're doing wrong per se, but just to
Mhm.
think about the fact that this is a very unique place and time where this is something that is new. And so I would say it's more important given the reality of cyber harassment, especially now on the heels of the pandemic. Cyber harassment incidentally increased 70% during the pandemic, specifically for teenagers. And now teenagers, the Department of Education recently came out with a study where teenagers are the demographic most likely to experience assault by other teens. And
Mhm.
so it's, to my mind, as a researcher and an analyst and a clinician, it's like this perfect storm where there's too much information, too much sexualized content in the media. Teenagers don't have the executive functioning capacity of their brain development to manage this input, and they're acting out as teenagers. And parents and teachers and counselors are struggling to figure out, how do we respond to this, what Tarana Burke would describe as an epidemic. Sexual assault in our country is an epidemic. So anyway, so that really puts us in a different situation currently than we've been in past generations.
And what is a good age for parents, I'll say parents, even teachers, whatever, but parents to start discussing sexual health, sexual experiences, etc., with their children?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm not going to pretend to be the expert on answering that, because I think it depends on the individual teenager. There are educators who believe that quality sex education in the state of Oregon specifically, it's the only state in the country that provides quality sex education starting in kindergarten. So in kindergarten, and our red flags go up like, kindergarten, that's too young. But what they're doing is they're very slowly and mindfully introducing the reality of sexual health, body parts, the body parts that need to be protected and that need to be private. They're introducing it slowly, starting in kindergarten. And a lot of people would say that's really smart. So it is the exception to the rule. There's only 10 states in the country currently that provide adequate sex education that's medically accurate. Most often, sex ed is taught in like an hour-long class, maybe by a gym teacher, and focuses on pregnancy and STDs. Which really, given the landscape that teens are navigating now, does not meet them where they're at. And so teens are protesting, and I'm sure you've seen in the news, teens are walking out of their classrooms, teens are protesting in town squares saying, we need more sex education. This isn't enough. And it's a political battle right now, as you know. So I guess for me personally, I do believe that it's up to the parent, it's up to the individual institution, if you will. But I think there's a lot of argument for starting at younger ages so that we're normalizing the fact that we are sexual beings. That's how we're made. And it's very normal, it's very natural, and that there are certain things that we have that are private, and that children can learn that at a young age, and it doesn't mean that that's going to harm them. So I think that we have a lot of fear around these conversations, fear that's kind of become its own block, if you will, around effectively talking about this stuff.
Okay. Yeah. And because I asked a question with two parts, actually, which when you were talking, I realized I did that. Because I really wanted to know and this is for parents and their children, is it better to start educating? And you talked about this in that last answer, but is it better to start educating your own children about this before? Like, what age is a good age so that when they're teenagers, they really are comfortable with boundaries and can maybe reduce that statistic of 1 in 4 women being sexually assaulted?
Yeah. So again, I would say, it's a slow progression over time that increases in depth as children get older. I would say that right now, given some of what we know around pornography, teens are going on pornography sites at younger and younger ages. So boys as young as 10 years old are going, boys younger than that, but it's starting to become more common for a 10-year-old, if you will, to go on a pornography site. So,
really?
So when it comes to cyberspace, it's a game changer. And if children are going to have a phone at age 10,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be educated at age 10. So that's, I can't stress that enough. My daughter at age 10 was looking for a Halloween costume with her cousins one day and stumbled on a pornography site. She had no idea what that was, but the way that she described it afterwards was, she said, "Mom, I could not erase that. I couldn't ever go back from what I saw." So this is what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teenagers are not receiving the sex education that they need at school, so they're turning to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because pornography is right there waiting in all of its insidious fashions, it's very easy. In fact, it's hard to avoid it, I would say. It's very easy to begin to use pornography as a way of learning about sex.
Mm-hmm.
Problem with that, beyond the obvious, is that 88% of pornography videos contain violence against women. And so we're starting to see a generation, and Peggy Orenstein, who wrote Boys and Sex and Girls and Sex, is an unbelievable resource, and I encourage your viewers to check out her work. She interviewed hundreds of teenagers for her books, and what she's finding is that boys at college age are saying, porn ruined my life. I discovered pornography in middle school. I started using it for self-pleasure. It became an addiction. I wasn't able to stop this addiction. And then when I got to college and I wanted to have a meaningful, beautiful relationship with my girlfriend who I love, I couldn't do it. Nothing was ever enough because I had been so influenced by the images of pornography all those years. And so boys are starting to believe that rough sex is normal. Girls are starting to believe that it's their job to please their male partner. So there's a lot. So I would say, to me, when you ask that question, the age that immediately comes to mind is 10.
Mm-hmm. Well, you gave a good reasoning for why. I'm really glad I re-asked that question because you answered my first question, of course, but I really wanted to give the audience, if they weren't a teacher, something concrete for their own children.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said, if you have a phone at 10, that's a good age. Oh my goodness, I think that will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know what they do on their phones unless you are savvy enough to go in and look at history, or I don't know, whatever. And kids are so smart now, they use VPN, they use everything, so that you really can't even track them. They're pretty smart.
Yeah.
Pretty smart. So for those of us who are parents, they have the upper hand. This is not like back in the day when your parents can say, "I've done that and I've been to," and I can tell you, no, we can't. We can't do that anymore.
Well, and it's the reality, and anybody with a teenager knows. I had the same struggle with my daughter when she was younger. It becomes an insatiable desire that they get their phone. Yeah. And I was just reading recently that parents often will identify an age, let's say 13. For my daughter, she was 15 when she got her first iPhone. And I was so glad I waited because everything changed once she got her first iPhone. But parents will identify an age, let's say it's 13. And usually what ends up happening is their children wear them down. Mm-hmm. And so they'll end up giving in and giving the children a phone at age 10. So it's this kind of vicious cycle. But I will say, in answer to your point, even if you don't give your child a phone at age 10, there's ways to have conversations that are mild and non-invasive and not scary. And that's partly what we're talking about in our work with parents and educators, is that this doesn't have to be a scary conversation. It can be an empowering conversation, because teenagers deserve, and young people as young as 10 deserve to know what are the messages that their body sends them when something doesn't feel right, when something's getting too close. Our body, as you know, as a doctor, our bodies are sending us messages all the time. And teenagers just haven't, or young people haven't learned to listen to that. They need some help with that. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then what do you say when somebody's crossing a boundary or getting too close?
Right.
There's some really fundamental steps in our course that help kids of any age.
And so, speaking of your course, then what are the few most important tools in your course that you teach in your course that you can share maybe with us?
Okay. Well, we have 5 what I call safety tools that are our course is cumulative. There's 5 classes. And so one of our primary goals is to build individual awareness and self-knowledge in each student we teach. So case in point, what I just mentioned around knowing what your body's telling you, knowing what your intuitive hits feel like. That's a way of building self-knowledge. Knowing what your communication skills are around how to let somebody know they've crossed a boundary, that's another piece of personal awareness. So the specifics around our tools are, we have 5 of them, and I'll name them. Common sense is one. So we have examples of, how do you practice common sense? For example, if you're out for an evening with a group of friends, this would be teenagers, obviously, make sure to have your phone charged. Make sure everybody in the group has their phone charged, and have a plan with each other. And so we spend a lot of time in class 3 talking about how to empower groups of teenagers when they're out for an evening, and especially if substances are involved, which they often are. How do you keep each other safe? How do you have a good time? And that's one of our goals, is like, teenagers deserve to have fun. They're going to go out. They're going to party. They're going to do things that teenagers do. They can do that and still stay safe. And there's ways to teach them how to do that. So that's kind of, example of common sense. And then intuition, I just talked about a second ago. Communication, how do you communicate your boundaries? People perception is one of our tools. And so that would be a little bit more nuanced way of talking about intuition or gut instinct. It's about reading people and beginning to identify if somebody is, as happened to my friend who I mentioned earlier, who was assaulted in 2019. When somebody comes across as friendly and then they begin to say things that feel off to you, notice that and get some space from that person, because they're probably, and as was true in this particular story, they're probably grooming you. And so children as young as, I would say even younger than 10 perhaps, but that's, debatable, should understand what grooming is. There are people who have ulterior motives when they are trying to spend time with you and show a friendly, trusting demeanor. If they begin to change that demeanor at all, you want to get away from that person. They've got an ulterior motive that is, obviously inappropriate and not okay. So that's another one of our tools. And then the last one is affect manipulation, which is kind of a heady way of talking about looking tough when you feel scared. And that really comes into play when, for example, you're walking down a city street, or, you're at a party and somebody starts acting out a little bit. Maybe they've had too much to drink, for example, they're acting out a little bit. And how you protect yourself by being really strong and maybe aggressive in that moment, if you need to be, is something that teenagers are not taught how to do.
Right.
They are taught to be good little boys and girls. And I've had many boys say to me, because boys are groomed too, often by older women. And they will say, I didn't want to be rude, so I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything.
Right.
And so we need to teach our youth that there are times when being nice it has to go out the window. Like, there's no room for being nice when somebody is crossing your boundaries and making you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They need help with that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our 5 tools.
Hmm. Those are good. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are really good. And this you use at a high school or middle school level? Because I know you say
We've
teens,
offered
but
the
there are
program.
teens in middle school.
Yeah, I mean, what's beautiful about the program is that it really can be, it can be manipulated. It's not quite the right word, but it can really fit for middle school to college age youth. So
Hmm.
we have taught that entire spectrum. So we've taught it middle school, we've taught it college. I think that high school, especially like that freshman year of high school, is a little bit of the sweet spot because there's so many things happening in high school that are different than middle school, and
Hmm.
it's where young people learn some of these skills again if they have access to them that then prepare them for college. So
Hmm.
I think high school is a really beautiful time to offer the program. But as people have pointed out to me repeatedly, it's becoming more necessary at middle school level as
Hmm.
well because of all the factors we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And let's just segue just for a minute and talk about your books. So, um, well, you've written a couple of books actually. So you can maybe first of all tell us about just the books that you've written, and then at the end tell us about the two books that relate to the subject that we're talking about today. Because I just want people to know I'm so proud of you that you've written other books.
Oh, well, that's lovely. So, so you're talking about the other book that's coming out soon? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, thank
What?
you.
I wait, and I'll back up. Didn't you write a book before that? Or
Okay.
something with your
I think we're
yeah,
talking about
see, Amy is being very what's the word? She doesn't want you to know
no, no,
this
no, no.
fabulousness.
I'm happy to have everybody know, but I do think we're talking about one book, which is the same book. So before Be Strong, Be Wise, which started, as I mentioned earlier, in 2019, before Be Strong, Be Wise, back in like 2015, I wrote a book on parenting. And I was a single parent for about 12 years. I raised my daughter from age 1.5 to like 13 when I married my now husband. Um, and I raised her as a single parent. So I have a really strong relationship with her father, and we co-parented and so forth. But I felt really strongly, and I had done some writing before that. And there is another book, but it's not published yet. I had written another book before that. But this particular book felt so close to my heart as a parent. And so I began to write, and it was quickly apparent to me that it's not just my story. And I wanted to have other voices. And so what ended up, it really felt like it was channeled almost, was this book on parenting that involved 26 other voices, 26 other parents, men and women, people from different, you know, locations, financial status, ethnicities, really a diverse pool of people. It was so exciting to have a lot of fathers wrote about their story, about their challenges and their strengths. And so that was kind of one of the themes of the book is
Love it.
single parenting's hard. Nobody's going to say it's easy, but it produces a unique kind of self-mastery, if you will. And so I really wanted to shed a more positive light on this family model, and because it's not seen so positively. And it was an exciting project, and it was, like I said, done a long time ago. Then, as happens to writers, something else inspires you, and you've got to follow that inspiration. If you don't follow it, you lose it. So when 2019 came around and the idea for Be Strong, Be Wise happened, it really was its own force, as you know from your book.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this other book, the parenting book, kind of got put on the back burner. And so what's so exciting is that now it's finally coming into print and will be launching December 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So it's really
wonderful.
exciting. So that is the parenting book. So that's going to be available soon. And then the Be Strong, Be Wise series has two books.
Mm-hmm.
One is written to and for young people. Teenagers are my ideal reader, so it's literally written as a letter to teens, if you will. And then the second book in the series is kind of a guide for adults, parents, educators, teachers, counselors who want to offer the Be Strong, Be Wise curriculum to the teenagers in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And both books, of course, correspond with a course. So there's courses that that are represented in both books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, and so yes, you've written. You're right. Yeah, I just wanted people to know,
Yeah.
that you've done things.
Yeah.
You've been there. You have a history. So yeah. So we're going to take just a quick break, and come back in just a minute and finish our conversation with Amy. And this is an excellent conversation for anyone who has children, anyone who deals with children. And so that should be most of us. So we will be back in just a minute, less than.
Do you suffer from bladder leaks? If you have ever leaked a little when you call for exercise, help is available. One in 3 women experience bladder leaks in her lifetime. For a free consultation, visit our website, thepelviccoach.com.
And you can go to thepelviccoach.com if you are indeed suffering from, and I'm not going to keep saying suffering, even though it does maybe feel like a suffer. But if you are experiencing bladder leaks, especially if you're in that beginning stage, because that's when you can really reduce and eliminate them with a lot less time involved. So if that is you or someone that you know and love, just have them go to thepelviccoach.com, and there is information on programs to help you reduce and eliminate your bladder leaks. And don't be surprised if you see my face, because guess what? That is me. So that is my mission. But we're going to come back and talk to Amy and get a little bit more information from her. What I want to ask you about now is how can parents begin to have these discussions with their children, teens, preteens, etc.?
A great place to start, and what I talk about a lot with folks, is helping teens understand the legal definition of sexual assault. A lot of young people, a lot of adults don't know the legal definition. So when you have that kind of conversation, and again, these conversations with young people are, as many parents know, are best when they take place in short, casual, check-in style conversations. So, when I was a kid, it was like, let's sit down and have the talk, and the talk can last for days. And it's like, and you lose them within 10 minutes. So I would say like 10 minutes, just little allotments of time when you're driving in the car is a great opportunity to have conversations. As many parents know, that's when the real gold happens in talking with teens. But letting them know the legal definition, because there's a couple of pieces to the legal definition that are important to know. A lot of folks still equate sexual assault with rape, and actually the definition is much broader. So if you make a threat to somebody, for example, and these things happen all the time, they're commonplace for teenagers. Cyber harassment's on the rise in school. It's partly why teenagers are having walkouts and protesting, because they're being, sexually harassed in the hallways at school. It's becoming more and more normal for the reasons that I already mentioned, right? Pornography use, so forth. So helping them know that actually that's against the law. If you threaten somebody sexually, that can be determined in a court of law as sexual assault if you verbally threaten somebody. And obviously most teenagers are not going to make a report about that, but they deserve to know that it's a serious violation, especially in a place of learning like school. It's not something that anyone should have to manage during the school day. So helping them understand the legal definition, and then being able to look at, what are some examples of sexual assault in our community, friend group, school, news, because 100% of teenagers, I can almost guarantee, know at least one story of sexual assault, whether it be in their friend group, whether it be an acquaintance, whether it be in the news. They have at least one story they've heard of, if not several. So talking about, what were the variables, and that's one of the missions in our course, what are the variables that went into that circumstance? What happened, in other words? Now, unfortunately, because sexual assault becomes, especially for teen groups, a polarizing phenomena, meaning that, it's like a he said, she said, there's victim blaming, there's perpetrator blaming. There's a lot of polarization that happens in teen groups on the heels of an assault. Again, because there's fear and confusion. People are trying to make sense of what happened. Teenagers are not, are equipped enough to figure out how to respond in a healthy way. So parents being able to have conversations about the variables that went into risk, and one of the primary ones being alcohol. So 50% of assaults involve alcohol, and that's an astronomical figure. So it's the number one variable. And if I had $1 for every story I've heard in my therapy practice involving alcohol, I'd be rich. So it is a huge phenomenon, and it's not going away. It's getting worse. Teenagers are getting more blackout drunk than they used to. Teenagers are having their first sexual experience while they're under the influence much more commonly than they used to. And again, it's all part of that vicious cycle I referenced earlier around sex in the media and peer pressure, influencing teens to expect themselves to be sexually ready before they're actually ready. So in other words, it's pushing sex at younger and younger ages, and it's pushing more rough sex at younger ages. So it's understandable that a young person might say, well, if I'm supposed to have sex, I might as well just get drunk because that will make it easier. And so again, I'm nobody's actually said that to me, but I'm imagining that it's something that's the thought process, however conscious or unconscious it is, because alcohol use is on the rise. And when you're blackout drunk, you cannot use the safety tools. When you're blackout drunk, you cannot make a decision around your own safety. You're completely compromised. And so there's a lot in our course that we discuss around substances, and how to talk with teens. So going back to your question, discussing the legal definition, talking about stories that may be known to a family, for example, and what if your teenager, for example, was a friend of the victim, and we don't necessarily need to ask them to pretend to be the victim, but if you were the victim's best friend, what would you say to them? How would you help them? What would you, building that kind of empathic response that gets them thinking about the reality for this person who has been assaulted. That's a really beneficial conversation to have. And then the last step is communicating. So being able to develop a script, helping young people develop a script for what they would say if they were in a situation that was similar. If somebody were crossing a boundary, if somebody were sending them an inappropriate text, if somebody were to give a sexually derogatory statement in a hallway at school, if somebody were to corner them at a party, what would they say and what would they do? And it's amazing how many young people don't have an answer to that. So when parents encourage them to develop a script, practice that script, which again, there's only so much so much control parents have over these things, but getting, those kind of reflective questions, which is what our course is based on, that get teenagers thinking about their own life. So the adult is not telling them well, you should do this and you should say this and you should, tell this person. They're not doing any of that. They're saying, what would you do? Who would your person be that you would talk to about it? What would the words be that you would say if somebody's getting too close? And how would you feel? How would you know that something's not right? What does that feel like for you? What is unwanted sexual touch or sexual threat? What does that mean to you? Because it's going to be different for every teen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're building, really what's happening is you're doing a couple of different things at the same time. You're teaching them about sexual safety and assault prevention, but you're also building emotional intelligence around their communication skills and their intuition, which are skills. That's why we call it healthy relationship building. They're going to need that in life in general, on all levels and with all relationships.
Right. So I can see how these conversations would happen over a long period of time, because they are, some of them can be very deep conversations that you don't want to, devote an hour, half hour, whatever, to. You really want, because teenagers don't want to hear a whole bunch of stuff. So, there's just a little snippets that you would have and make each one of those, I guess, meaningful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you're going to have the eye rolls. You're going to have the comments. You're going to have, that's just part of it, especially if you're a parent,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it's why people, seek us out, is because parents know that they are not an objective person in this child's life. And so that doesn't create, and every relationship's different. Some parents have amazing relationships with their teenagers and they can talk about all this stuff.
Right.
Most parents I talk to say, I'm the last person that my child would talk to about sex. So especially, sons talking to their mothers, for example.
True.
So as you pointed out, like short check-in style conversations that take place over time and that kind of build. But even if you get the eye roll and the shoulder shrug, it's going in.
Mm-hmm.
Information's going in, and I guarantee you there will be a time when that young person remembers that conversation, and it may make a huge difference in their life experience.
That's a really, really good point. A good
Mm-hmm.
point. I did want to go back to when you were talking about the law and what people are not aware of what the law is when it comes to sexual assault or harassment or whatever. So are you saying that if you're in school and someone walks down the hall and makes a sexual comment to you that is not what you feel is appropriate, that is against the law? Is that what you said?
Well, it's the interpretation of the law is a huge issue with educators right now. And I could go on and on about that. We have a lot of debate around consent currently because of the interpretation of the law. So technically, and that's why it's important to talk with teens about the legal definition. Technically, according to the legal definition, a sexual threat verbally can be, that's how it's worded in the legal definition, can be seen as sexual assault. And of course, it depends on the threat. It depends on the power differential between the person who says the comment and the person who receives it. There's a lot of pieces to it. The reason why it's important is because these kinds of comments, again, have become normal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we don't want them to be normal. This is not normal. It's like, I've heard young people say getting blackout drunk is normal, a normal part of high school. So the developing brain doesn't like it one bit. Your safety odds are just, they go out the window when it comes to that kind of behavior. So it's not normal. And we need to begin to lean into that in our conversations with teens. The other thing that's becoming much more normalized are requests for nude pictures. So I've heard several girls. Oh.
Well, I'm off the game. So, yeah. Really?
Well, yeah. So requests for nude pictures being a part of the middle school and high school experience for girls weekly, if not daily.
Really?
So girls are saying this is normal. It's just a normal part of middle school and high school. So what do? I ask them, well, what do you do when somebody requests a nude picture? These are like 13-year-old girls. What do you do when somebody does that? Oh, I just block them and ignore it. So this is the protocol. It's normal behavior. I just block them and ignore it. And for these young girls, it's like that's their response, and that's them feeling as though they are taking the steps that they need to for themselves in that experience. And this has nothing to do with the law, which actually says, putting nude pictures online is against the law. You can get placed on the sex offenders registry, which I've seen happen, if you keep posting nude pics after somebody's asked you to stop. So this is a serious transgression, and yet it's happening daily, weekly, if not daily, for girls as young as 13. And they're describing it as normal. So I would say the situation's not getting better, it's getting worse. And this is why having these kinds of conversations is so important. When something becomes normal, we stop trying to do anything to change it. And that's what I see happening in schools, and why I feel so strongly about getting this curriculum into the health class at the middle school and high school level, because that's when it can make a difference. And it's can begin to see, and these young women, for example, but it happens to young men too. Absolutely, young men are being sent provocative images and threats for sure. Yeah. It's on the rise with young men as well. So, but when they can know that it's against the law, when they can know that there are steps to take, and these steps are all outlined in our course and in the book, then there's a possibility for that mutual empowerment where like young people are supporting young people. And, is that happening to you? Yeah, it's happening to me. Is it the same person? Yes. Like, we should go talk to somebody about this. You shouldn't be sitting in a math class with somebody sending you a text requesting a nude picture. It's like not okay. And yet teenagers think it is. So we need a lot more conversation. For sure.
And the response of I ignored it and I just blocked them, that is appropriate response?
I would say it's not inappropriate. It's not complete.
Okay.
Because it doesn't stop the behavior and it doesn't call out the offender.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, I didn't, I thought, that if it could go a step further, not everybody's able to do that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But to go a step further. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that we talk about in our course, and I when I speak to schools, I recently did a school-wide assembly, and we talked about, research. I love talking about research because I think young people are research driven. They are so tech savvy that if you give them a stat, they'll probably try and prove you wrong. They do a Google search in 2 seconds flat and find out if your statistic is right or not. And if you have an accurate statistic that you can present to young people, you have the ability to connect with them. Right? Here's an objective fact. What are we going to do about this objective fact? So one of the objective facts that I presented at the assembly was that studies are showing that what young people most want in relationships are trust and connection. Right? It's a human need. It's a human desire in relationship to have trust and connection. And this can be, again, children as young as 10 or as old as 25. So when young people hear that and they begin to hear everything else I'm trying to talk about, like safety and the law and cyber harassment and sexism, they can begin to see that these two things don't really go together so very well. If you're requesting nude pictures from somebody, you're not building a safe, trusting connection with that person. Correct. And if you don't feel safe, you can't have trusting connection. So I think that, for young people to begin to see, like, wait a second, I'm going about this wrong. I'm not giving myself what I want. This is just I'm doing what everybody else is doing, or what my screen tells me to do, or what these sites are telling me to do. It's an empowering process. where they
Mhm.
can begin to create other avenues for getting their relationship needs met. And that's super exciting.
Yeah.
For them and for, of course, me as a teacher, but it's really exciting to see that shift take place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 You're doing great work. Great work. I
Um,
have your website here on the screen. And can you briefly tell us about if we go to the website, what would we find?
so on the website, you'll find both books in the series.
Okay.
You'll find there's a tab for both programs, our program for youth and our program for educators, or train the trainer, if you will.
Okay.
Then we also have a workshop for parents. And so those 3 courses are all on the website. There's a way of contacting me. And there's lots and lots of articles and interviews and so forth. We also have a blog where we've got a lot of articles. And it's just a way of, again, getting informed and,
Hmm.
and being able to read about some of what's happening, everything that we're talking about today.
Great. Okay. So it certainly is worthwhile to visit BeStrongBeWise.com.
We
And
also have
that is
a lot of testimonials from parents, educators, and students who have taken the course, which is helpful for people to
mhm.
read about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of information, yeah, on the website. Great. So yep, BeStrongBeWise.com. So Amy, we are at the end of our interview.
That went fast.
Um, yeah, it was a lot of fun, which I of course knew it would be. I knew that. Um,
Well,
but
it's a
yeah,
hard topic, but it's fun talking to you.
yeah, but while you gave information that parents, grandparents, well, almost anybody,
Yeah.
is if you um, have any contact with children, young
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
which hopefully many people do because they keep you on your toes.
Right.
Yeah, so it was really good information for all of us to really
I'm glad.
realize what's going on, and kind of an eye opener too, especially for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for asking the good questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. And audience, we are at the end of the show for today. So I want to thank you so much for watching as always. Every Thursday at 9 Pacific and noon Eastern time, I am here on KP Media Television. So I am your host, Dr. Sheila Craig Whiteman, and I would like to thank you, and I will see you again next time. You all take care, and of course, live well. Bye bye.